Welcome to Call Me First, where leadership isn't just a title, it's a lifestyle. This podcast is for men who take responsibility. This is for the fathers, the brothers, the husbands, the mentors, the sons, the ones who refuse to settle and know it's on us to lead. Now, this ain't about running corporations or commanding armies. It's about something way deeper. Leading at home, leading within, and breaking cycles that hold us back. I'm walking this journey with you, learning, growing, and stepping up so that we can return more to our families. So if you're ready to get better, lead stronger, and build a legacy that lasts, look at your family and say, call me first. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to Call Me First, the podcast where men step up, lead, and break cycles. I am Damian Lewis, and today we're tackling something that has held a lot of us back for generations. We're breaking the patterns we were raised with and redefining leadership in our families. Let me start off by asking you this question. How much of your leadership style is shaped by how you were raised? Think about that for a second. Are you leading your family the way your father led? The way your uncles or grandfather or older brothers did? How many habits are you repeating? Not because they work, but because it's all you've ever known. See, the way we lead in our homes or careers, even in everyday life, is deeply rooted in how we were raised. And let's be real, some of those lessons helped us, but not all of them. Some of us watched the men in our lives fail their families. Fathers who weren't there, marriages that fell apart, men jumping from job to job, or worse, ending up being incarcerated. And whether we like it or not, we picked up some of those patterns. I know firsthand. Growing up, I didn't have a consistent example of a strong male leadership. I was left to figure things out on my own. And let me tell you, trial and error is a painful way to learn how to be a man. And here's the thing. This lack of leadership doesn't just affect us. It shows up in the next generation too. What do I mean by that? How many times have you been out at a grocery store or a restaurant and you've seen a kid, not 4 or 5 years old, but maybe 10, 12 years old, completely out of control, disrespectful, talking back, acting wild? And the first thought that comes across my mind is that kid's father isn't in his life. And if he is, he's not showing up the way he should. Because you can tell when a child has an active, competent father. It's obvious. The truth is, we lead from the lessons we were taught, whether they were good or bad. And for too many of us, those lessons are keeping us stuck in cycles we need to break. So the real question is, are you leading by default or by design? Today, we're going to talk about how to break these patterns, step into real leadership, and build a legacy our children can be proud of. Let's get into it. I'm going to keep it real with you. When I was younger, I'm talking late teens, all through my 20s or even early 30s. I was moving through life mimicking what I saw in relationships, in leadership, and responsibilities without fully understanding the consequences. And one day it hit me. I was becoming the very things I swore I would never be. For me, that moment of truth came in my mid-30s. I looked at my life and made a decision. That decision was, I will not continue to repeat the same mistakes the men before me made. I wasn't going to be another man who left his children with the same struggles I had to overcome. And here's the truth. I need you to hear this. Leadership starts with the man in the mirror. It is you versus you. If you don't break the cycle, the next generation will carry the same weight, the same struggles, and the same dysfunction. Your kids will be the latest version of whatever example you set. Now, I know every competent man wants his son to be better than he was. If that's true, then you have one job. Break the pattern. Let's talk about how to do that. I'll tell you how that journey started for me. I was going through a tough time in life, maybe about 3-4 years ago. I was going through a tough breakup, and a breakup where I wound up going from a weekend father to a full-time dad overnight. I wind up being in a situation that all the responsibilities of raising a child fell on me. And this was the first time in life this was an active situation. I was in a jam. I really couldn't at the time, well, I thought I couldn't handle being a full-time dad on my own, right? But I stepped up to the plate and I made the move necessary to actually be fully involved in what my role is at the time. I'm one of these people, right? It's a lot of times that I don't give my best. Let me say I was one of these people. It's a lot of times that I wouldn't give my best because I knew someone would pick up the slack. That is the truth. I knew someone would pick up the slack, so a lot of times I wouldn't give my best, and that was a horrible habit to have. So even though I was capable of doing a lot of things, I just didn't do it because I knew someone else would pick up the slack. When the pressure of being a full-time dad got put on me, I did exactly what I needed to do. Let me be clear and say I didn't do it by myself. I was fortunate to have a lot of help from family and friends that were around, and I'm always grateful for that, right? One of the situations that I actually put myself in to get better, I was actually introduced to a program on YouTube by a friend of mine, and the name of the program is called The Business. It is with a host by the name of Jason Black, and I hope one day I get to meet this brother. I can be honest here and say that man probably saved my life as far as me not going down a rabbit hole, dealing with emotions and issues that I was actually facing during a time of one of the worst periods of my life. I listened to this guy's program. I'm gonna be honest with you. It is not a program of motivation. It is a program of self-reflection. What that program does is makes you realize that whatever high horse you were on, whatever greatness that you thought you were, you're not that. And you need to restart, regenerate, and come back stronger than you were. That program broke me down so bad. I remember I'm driving at night and I'm listening to this program, and the emotions that actually came over me during this program, it was all self-reflection. It was forcing me to take accountability for a lot of the actions that caused me to be where I was at the time, right? So that program, I encourage anybody that's going through something, whether it be male or female, if you do find a time, get on and listen to that program, The Business with Jason Black. It's not for everyone, and you will get some tough lessons, right? So I know you're wondering, how do we break those generational patterns? How do we become the leaders that to shape our families differently than how we were shown growing up? I'll tell you how. As men, there are a few challenges when it comes to developing as leaders. I'll name the top 3. The first one is the lack of a strong male role model. If you didn't have a father around or he wasn't a good example of leadership, you're left to actually figure things out on your own. And that's not easy, right? The second one would be emotional baggage. A lot of us carry unresolved issues from our past, whether it's resentment, feelings of abandonment, or just bad habits that we picked up along the way. Those emotions get in the way of being the strong leaders in our families needs us to be, right? The third one would be the pressure of being the man. Society tells us that we're supposed to have it all together. But deep down, many of us feel like we're just trying to keep it together without falling apart. That pressure can paralyze us. But here's the thing. You don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to repeat those old patterns. So what does it look like to redefine leadership in your family? It starts with my favorite thing. It starts with accountability. The number one trait of a strong leader is accountability. Leadership isn't about being in charge. Let's get that straight. It's not about being in charge. It's about being responsible for the actions that you take or make. When I say I love breaking down accountability, this is one of the most profound things that I actually learned later in my 30s. You could tell how delayed the development was with responsibility, which leads to accountability. My number one thing, whenever I'm going through a conflict or issues or whatever it is, I always look to see where I went wrong. I always look to see what I could have done better. And in the heat of conflict, I always look to see what can I do to resolve this issue. Accountability is so important to me. And I want to express this to a lot of people, right? When you're in a conflict or a disagreement with a person, and the argument or conversation may be getting out of hand, let me say this to you guys, a lot of the conflict and the disagreements could be settled with a person just taking accountability. Say, yes, I did that. I made a mistake. My bad. I should have known better. I should have done better. I take full responsibility. At many times for us men, at that point, the argument is over. The disagreement is over. It's accountability. It's something I used to struggle with. Now, not so much. I am doing a lot of self-reflection, and accountability was one of my biggest things. This is the number one strong trait of a person being a leader. It's about being responsible for your own actions. In my life, I had to learn the hard way. After years of acting immature, I had to take a good hard look at myself and say, bro, it's time to grow up. It's time to lead with integrity. Accountability means you own your mistakes. You don't deflect blame. You take responsibility. If you mess it up, admit it. This is the basics of it. And if you do something well, own that too. When your family sees you doing this, they start to trust you more and more as a leader. Believe me, this is true. Next, we want to be present. A leader is present. I can tell you as a father of 3, this is something that I really, really struggle with, right? And I'm learning to actually do better. When my kids need me, I need to show up, not just physically, but emotionally too. I had 2 sons before I got married, right? And when I married my wife, she already had a daughter. Based on how I was raising 2 sons at the time, my emotional connection to certain things weren't as gentle as it could have been, right? I had to switch all of that up when I got married to my wife and she came in with a daughter. I had to become a little bit more emotional and understanding that emotions play a huge role in children's lives. So me having to be a little bit more emotional with a girl compared to boys actually helped me become a better father. I wasn't as militant and hard with my sons as before because I actually realized that emotional issues affect men also, right? So one thing I can actually give credit to my daughter for is teaching me an emotional connection with the people around me. That is one of the best lessons I learned as a father also, the emotional connection that you need to have with your children. Now that's leadership. It's showing up when you're needed the most and not just when it's convenient. Leadership is something you do by example. It's easy to tell your kids or your wife how they should behave, but it's harder to show them. If you want your family to live with discipline, respect, and responsibility, you have to show them. They're watching you all of the time. Your words are important, but your actions are even more powerful. Leadership is selflessness. It's about putting the needs of others before your own. This has been a major lesson in my marriage. Being selfless doesn't mean you lose yourself, but it means you're willing to make sacrifices for the people who depend on you. I had to learn to put my wife's needs before my own and how to compromise, how to work together for the good of the family. Let me break down some real world examples, right? When I got married, my wife and I had some serious disagreements early on. One of our biggest challenges was our difference in spirituality. And it really wasn't a difference. I just wasn't as locked in as she was. She was really into the Word of God, and she wanted me to be a part of it, naturally. She was deeply invested into her faith, and like I said, she definitely wanted me more involved. I wasn't opposed to spirituality. I was actually in support of it. Like I said, though, I just wasn't as locked in as she was. Now, this caused a bit of tension in our marriage, but I had to make a choice. I could either stick to my own comfort zone or let it divide us. Or I could step up and meet her halfway. And that's what I did. I chose to meet her halfway, and we found a balance that actually worked for us. I don't know about you, but that's what I call leadership. It's about finding solutions and making things work for the good of the whole family. Next, raising my kids has taught me a lot about the importance of discipline. Every day I remind them about responsibility. Sometimes it isn't easy. I've learned that discipline creates freedom. Now, when they know boundaries and rules, they know what to expect. This gives them freedom to make good choices and become responsible individuals. Next, in my business and career, I've had to face obstacles. As a truck driver, sometimes I feel the pressure, but I always remind myself, I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for my children. I'm doing this for my wife. It's not about me. It's about the legacy I want to leave behind. It's about the example I want to set for my kids. So they know that no matter how hard things get, you have to keep pushing. Now, I want to give you an assignment for today that will help you start breaking those old generational patterns and redefining leadership in your family, right? Look in the mirror. Take a moment to reflect on the way you lead. How much of your leadership is shaped by how you were raised? Be honest with yourself. Is there something from your past that's affecting the way you lead now? Next, I want you to identify one area that you can improve in. It might be in accountability, being more present, or being selfless. Pick one that you could start working on today. Next, put that one thing into practice. If it's about being more present, spend some extra time with your children or with your spouse. If it's about accountability, take responsibility for something that you've been avoiding. Make it simple, but make it count. Take the responsibility for something that you've been avoiding. I can't stress how much accountability will save a lot of issues inside your relationship and inside your household. It is okay to take accountability. Just fix the problem moving forward. That will be all I have for you guys today, but I want to leave you with this. You're in control of the legacy that you leave behind. You're in control of the way you lead your family. Break the cycle of negative generational patterns. It starts with you. If you found this episode helpful, do me a favor. Save this episode, download it, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. Thanks for tuning in. And remember to look at your family and say, call me first.